So the murder case is a huge topic around campus with the Tejadas, now with Davis McLean and Cooper Sachs, and it's even stretched as far as Simon Stern, because he has a vested interest in Stansfield, Zeke, and of course, Tariq. But there's not only just one murder, and that's important to remember. There's Barz's death, Ramirez's death, and of course Jabari's as well, who all could be linked to Kane, but they can also be linked to Dru as well, because that mainly stems from Ev slipping up and Jabari writing his name in his notepad. And he really is going down a dark path, and he may even have to make some tough choices when it comes to his relationships with his family and Ev. And with his character being based around Michael Corleone, Dru is someone who's going to be going through an evolution as someone who didn't want to be in the game but left with no option but to take over and lead. Now, at the head of the Tejada family, we have Lorenzo and Monet. They have 3 kids, well 4 if you count Zeke now. And just like in The Godfather, one of these kids will have to eventually take over the family business. Now, naturally the oldest one would be in line to take over, which in this instance would be Kane. But as we all know, Lorenzo has different plans. So in this video, we're going to have a look at the evolution of Dru, how his character is molded around Michael Corleone, and how the events of what has played out and what will play out will only lead to one path for Dru. Now, we're also going to be looking at the bigger picture in terms of the murder case and how Dru is right in the middle of it and how he could find himself as a suspect as well. But let's dive deep on Dru and Ev's death and how this could be a game-changing moment. But we have to paint the bigger picture of the whole story first. Now, he's a character who wants to forge his own path, but the issue in life is, whether it be in the drug game or in general life, nobody knows where they're going. Do you guys know where you're going, or do you just sometimes follow the path which life leads you down? Now, Dru has a plan of his own. He wants to draw, he wants to live his own life, where he's not under the shackles of Monet. And this is the problem, he's a prisoner of his own circumstances. He was born into this life, where Monet has him play in this position, for example taking care of a grown-ass man in Zeke in episode 4, whereas Lorenzo has a vision for him to take over the family business, hence the Tejada family tree at the beginning of this video. But the problem for Dru is, he doesn't want to play the position that Monet has for him, or the position that Lorenzo wants him to play. And the situation has started to get dark and serious for Dru already. As much as he wants to draw and live a normal life with Ev and go to college, all of these options which provide him with an escape from reality will start to be taken away from him, just like we saw him not being able to draw in the first episode. The one thing which he loves, which is his escape from reality, he's not been able to do, and that's the start of him going down this dark path, where all of these options will be taken away, until one option remains, and that's him having no choice but to follow his destiny, which is the streets and the game, and ultimately having to kill Ev for the greater good, because you ain't a real killer till you kill someone you love, and he knows way too much information than he should. He knows about Dru and how his family have a connection to the GTG. He was also a witness to this moment in season 1, where Lil Guap put a gun to Zeke's knee. And not only did he witness what Dru is capable of, he put Dru at the scene of the crime by mentioning his name to Carrie and Jabari, which of course led to this altercation. So Dru gave Ev the opportunity to ask him one question about his family, just this one time, exactly like Michael Corleone did.
This one time I'll let you ask me about my affairs.
So this one time, you can ask me whatever you want about my family.
Dru, Michael Corleone, don't deny it. I will not deny it. I will say, yes, you are correct. And in fact, for those of you who did catch the Godfather reference this season, in this episode, I'm sure a lot of you did. Absolutely. I'm telling you that openly. I will not try to deny it.
Now, that's Courtney Kemp confirming how Dru is essentially going down the same path as Michael Corleone. So let's talk about the Michael Corleone connection. And for those who don't know who he is, he's the Don, the Godfather, a story which was essentially based around family, loyalty, power, drugs, and business. A business which at the beginning, Michael Corleone doesn't want anything to do with, and this is very similar to how Dru doesn't want anything to do with the Tejada family business. But Michael Corleone went from someone who wasn't about his family life to then becoming the head of the family and someone who was given the orders.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
Body them wops. End this shit. For good.
So don't ever take any sides with anyone against the family again. And Dru warned Kane that he better body them guaps. And this was essentially his first Michael Corleone moment, with how he told him to deal with Lil Guap because of how he came after their family, because that's what great leaders do, just as Monet told him in season 1. Now, Michael Corleone was someone who was also in love. He was honest and loyal to his girlfriend, similarly to how Dru wants to be open and honest with Ev. But this changed with Michael Corleone, and that's because he opened his eyes to what was important, which was his family power, and without him, they were at risk of losing everything. Now, Michael Corleone, he joined the Marines to get away from the family business, but ironically, it gave him the skill set to protect his family and eventually lead. And this is why Dru still holds such an integral role within the Tejada family business, because their whole family is at risk with this Tejada split, especially when you add Mecha into the mix. Mecha is playing a huge game with Monet and the Tejadas, and we still don't know what his real motives are, so Monet and the Tejadas will definitely need Dru at some point, especially when there's a life or death situation, and this is where the training that Kane gave him in episode 2 will come to the forefront. Him learning to shoot with his left hand will definitely come to play later on this season, just like how Michael's training came into play for him when he saved his father from being hit while he was in the hospital. So let's talk about some game-changing moments for Michael's character and how we could see a similar evolution from Dru's character. Now, Michael went through several hard moments in his life. We spoke about his father being shot, his brother Sonny being gunned down, which rocked Michael's world when he was in Sicily, the betrayal of his own brother Fredo, which was very relatable to Power Book 2 Ghost, and how Kane is always going against the family and showing this constant betrayal, obsession, and jealousy over Tariq. But Kane is also another character who can be likened to Sonny Corleone because of both of them being hot-headed and being easily manipulated, which is why they'd never make the greatest of leaders. Now, after the death of his brother Sonny, what was arguably the biggest moment which turned Michael Corleone ice cold and killed any feelings that he had was the death of Apollonia. And this is a death that drove him into making the choice of returning to his family and destiny. And this is a similar story and path which I think Dru has to suffer from. We need to see Dru turn more cold. And notice how when he was leaving the Tejada house, Davis was walking in. Davis McLean called him a killer, then foreshadowing what Dru's about to become. And he may have to turn into just that, a killer. And the most important part of all of this, which I spoke about in my predictions video, is Dru's name is written in Jabari's notepad, which Carrie made reference to in episode 4. Carrie knows that Jabari was onto the GTG, and at the top he wrote Dru, who's in charge, and DC Joe. And while Ev was being questioned by Carrie and Jabari, he mentioned Dru's name while they were investigating Barz's death. And now we know the campus is hot, and they're conducting searches of everyone's room and questioning everybody who has pills or drugs in their rooms. Now, Ev is someone who also takes drugs that is supplied by Dru and the Tejadas, which Tariq sells through Course Correct. So if Ev is ever taken in for questioning and Kamal Tate presses him, he's someone that will have to go, someone that will have to be killed off for Dru to really turn ice cold. Exactly like how Apollonia's death sucked out any humanity left in Michael Corleone. And what's more personal than business when it's family business? When it comes to family, and if Dru's family is in danger, he'll have a choice to make, and unfortunately, I think Ev in this case will catch a hot one. So that's Dru Tejada, and how we could see a similar evolution to what we saw with Michael Corleone. It really is only a matter of when, and not if, his character takes a dark turn. So drop all your thoughts down below on Dru Tejada, and whether you think Ev is his game-changing moment. Drop all your comments down below, and of course if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.